iPad Pro 9.7 Review. Apple's best tablet, but it won't replace a laptop. The iPad Pro raised some eyebrows when it debuted last year, but it really shouldn't have. Although tablet sales as a whole have been tanking, sales of tablets with detachable keyboards have actually grown. Is it any surprise, then, that Apple built a 9.7-inch version of the Pro to try and regain some of its tablet momentum? Not at all. Whether or not this new Pro can be the ultimate PC replacement Apple was hyping at its launch event depends on your personal preferences, but let's get one thing straight from the start: this is one of the best tablets you can buy. Summary: calling it a full-blown laptop replacement is a stretch, but Apple's new 9.7-inch iPad Pro is the best conventional tablet the company has made. It combines the power of the original 12.9-inch iPad Pro with the thin frame of the iPad Air 2. Additionally, it brings a vibrant, color-accurate screen and the best camera we've seen on an iPad to date. If you need a proper laptop, you should still buy one, but if all you want is a great tablet, the 9.7-inch Pro is the one to get. Hardware: tell me if this sounds familiar. Apple, looking to broaden its appeal, takes an existing high-end device and squeezes its important bits into a smaller, familiar-looking body. That was the case with the iPhone Southeast, and at first glance, that appears to be true of the 9.7-inch iPad Pro as well. It seems like last year's iPad Pro in the body of an iPad Air 2. Still, there are some omissions to be aware of. The A9X chipset in the 9.7-inch model is back, for instance, but it's paired with 2 GB of RAM, half of what the larger model has. I'll dig into what that means for performance a little later. Spoiler: not much for most people, but the change nonetheless makes this Pro seem, well, a little less pro. 3D Touch still hasn't made it over to the iPads, either because of cost or sheer technical infeasibility. There's a Touch ID sensor embedded in the home button as usual, but it seems to be the slightly slower, older version, not the one in the iPhone 6s. So well, your mileage may vary, but the trade-offs seem well worth it to me. It's been a week since Apple loaned me the review unit, a silver LTE model with 256 GB of storage, priced at $1,029, and I'm still impressed with its fit and finish. The physical differences between this model and the Air 2 are nearly non-existent, which raises an interesting conundrum. At first, this thing doesn't feel any more pro than the Air 2 because they share a frame. Then again, I'm not the kind of person who's eager to trade a traditional laptop for a tablet. Full disclosure: I've been an outspoken fan of the Air 2's design since it came out, but using the super snappy Pro ruined that older tablet for me. Now nearly all that power is available in a more manageable size, albeit one that feels less like a full-blown PC replacement. After all, the Big Pro's 12.9-inch screen was great for movies and certain professional applications, as was that extra RAM. The rest of the new Pro's broad strokes are the same as its big brothers. There's a power button up top, 4 speakers drilled into each corner, and the same 3-pin smart connector on the left side for accessories. Apple couldn't downsize the massive 38.5 Wh battery to fit in the Air 2-sized chassis, though, so we're left with a smaller 27.5 Wh battery instead. Curiously, the 9.7-inch model is in some ways more impressive than the original. For starters, it features the iPhone 6's 12-megapixel rear camera with the f/2.2 lens to wrists. Rejoice! I won't dwell on it since I've basically reviewed the same camera sensor 3 times now. Suffice to say, It's the best camera ever put in an iPad, and you'll be able to capture some primo shots if tablet photography is your thing. Oh, and the plastic panel on the back of 3G model has been replaced with an infinity-like antenna band, too. Now it's time for some nitpicking. The antenna band carved into the LTE Pro's aluminum body isn't completely even, and I can't unsee it. On the plus side, the camera lump on the back doesn't make the iPad wobble when it's resting face up on a table. Infinity 6S owners can't say the same. All this power might cost you, though. The Pro starts at $599 for the 32GB Wi-Fi model, with 128GB and 256GB versions costing an extra $150 and $300, respectively. And as always, cellular-ready options will cost you even more, the $130 premium across the board. Display and sound now. About net screen. It's fantastic. The 9.7-inch LED display runs at a resolution of 2048 x 1536, so it's not any crisper than the Air 2 or Original Pro, but whatever. It's still sharp and beautifully saturated. Videographers and editors in particular will appreciate Apple's support for the P3 color gamut, the standard with a broader range of colors that sees wide use in the film industry. The feature first debuted on the recent 4K and 5K IMAX and could be quite valuable for some. After all, the Pro offers enough power to ingest and edit 3 4K video streams at the same time. Then again, if you're an amateur like me, you'll likely never need to know these specifics. The screen is very bright too, actually a hair brighter than the first iPad Pro. The difference is 100 nits, if you're keeping count. The difference might not be vast, but if nothing else, it makes for a display that's easy to read in direct sunlight. The sun's only going to get more intense as spring wears on, but I was able to breeze through a few chapters of the graphic Skimmy novel while lounging in my backyard. Reading, as it turns out, is a great way to test one of the new Pro's unique features, the True Tone display. In short, it uses an ambient sensor stuck in the iPad's forehead to figure out what kind of light you're in and change the screen's color temperature to look more natural. It might sound like one of those uber nerd features you'll never use, but it's actually lovely. See? The iPad's display is normally neutral to the point of looking slightly bluish. True Tone automatically adjusts the color so that whites look like a sheet of paper no matter what weirdly lit environment you're in. This might sound a little familiar. Samsung's Galaxy Tab S did this 2 years back, but it's a neat feature nonetheless. True Tone doesn't seem to have much of an impact on battery life either, so the only reason not to use it is if you're editing photos or cutting video, situations where you really need that color accuracy. Meanwhile, the speakers are just as loud as they were on the original Pro. If you haven't used a larger model, take it from me, this is a good thing. Speaker design aside, we've also got some clever software to thank for this. As on the first iPad Pro, no matter which way you're holding the iPad, highs and mids get routed to the topmost speakers, while lower frequencies issue forth from the bottom pair. The end result is crisp sound whether you're listening to audiobooks or the amazing finale from Whiplash. Performance and battery life, I'll admit it, I was pretty curious coming into this review. After all, this iPad Pro has half the RAM the other Pro does, but then again, it's driving a much smaller display and therefore needs to push fewer pixels. As it turns out, I was concerned over nothing. Thanks to Apple's A9X chipset, the 9.7-inch Pro is almost equally fast. I spent my week putting the Pro through a wide and weird variety of scenarios. It was well suited to shooting off Slack messages and Outlook emails during workdays, as well as light photo editing in Pixelmator and incessant tweetbot refreshes. Basic actions like switching between apps and using iOS 9's slide-over feature to run to apps in split screen felt smooth too. I expected multitasking in particular to be a little jerkier because of the smaller RAM allotment. But nope, all was well. Of course, the Pro line prides itself on running specialized, power-intensive apps, and those pose no problem here either. I blew an entire evening skinning a meticulously rendered skeleton around to learn the names of bones and trying in vain to design something worth showing off in 3D design apps like UMake and Autodesk's Forma 360. Sorry Mom, I'll never be that architect you wanted. When my misguided attempts at creativity failed, I threw myself into gorgeous games like AG Drive and Warhammer 40,000 Free Played. Surprise! Surprise! Both of them and many others ran smoothly. Now, I didn't see any differences in graphical and gaming performance between the two iPad Pros, but that doesn't mean there aren't any. The Pro 9.7 notched near identical benchmark scores as the bigger model, except for some strangely lower frame rates when I ran GFX Bench's off-screen Manhattan test. Both Pros delivered near identical numbers when rendering frames on screen. That hiccup aside, this is the most power Apple has ever crammed into a 9.7-inch iPad, and if you're coming from an older iPad, it's downright revelatory. The iPad Pro 9.7 ships with iOS 9.3, and aside from a few notable additions like Night Shift and a more secure Notes app, the software experience is nearly identical to the original Pro. Sadly, that means multitasking can feel clumsy and inelegant. Not quite what I hoped for out of a device Apple claims can replace a traditional laptop. Swiping on the screen to open the app drawer where you can choose an app to run in split view mode reveals an unorganized list that often requires some poking around to find the app you were looking for. And when you're split screening, it takes to work to change how those two apps are displayed. Let's say you've got Safari running on the left side and Mail on the right. To make them switch places, you have to drag the divider to make Mail full screen and open up Safari from the slide-over panel. Nightmare. Hardly, but it's still more tedious than it should be. Then again, this is the sort of interface issue that affects power users and PC switchers more than anybody else. If you're just looking for a speedy tablet, you might not care at all.